So we've got Tony Olney from Seattle. Go for it.
Great. Hi, my name is Tony Olney, and I'm a parent. I have two daughters, and I'm a coach like you all, a coach that actually is coaching his daughters. And they still love me. I still love them. I have coached sports from high school football to girls JV basketball to boys high school lacrosse, and now I'm doing girls middle school lacrosse. I've also been an administrator, run leagues, and believe it or not, I'm still a player. I still occasionally get together and play in a Masters lacrosse game. So I think I can empathize with you all sitting in the audience here that I've probably been in your shoes one time or another in my career. I want to welcome you to the PCA Double Goal Workshop, and this is a workshop. So keep that in mind. It's going to be interactive, and I'm going to put you on the spot, and I want you to participate with me. I just don't want to be a one-side conversation. So before I go and tell you a bit more about myself, I want to know why you all are here. Now, if we were in a large group, I'd have you break up into small groups, but since there's really only 5 of us, or 4 of us, I want to hear individually from each of you. Why are you here? Why are you here? There's got to be a reason you're at this workshop. Kelly, why don't you start?
I was told that I had to come to this workshop or else I wouldn't be allowed to coach for Coventry Youth Lacrosse.
It's excellent. You know, I've been in many workshops as well where I've had to be there, but I'll tell you, I think you're going to get something out of this because part of PCA is using proven data-driven methodologies to make your players better. And I think all of us in the room, whether we have to be here or not, are here for a reason. And I think one of them is to be better coaches and to have our players do better.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well then, in that case, what I'd really like to learn is how to deal with I have a lot of difficult players on my team, and I thought it would be nice to hear some ways to deal with kind of behavior issues and sort of kids that are pretty tough to deal with. Excellent.
The great thing about PCA is we have some proven tools to put in your toolbox that's going to help you deal with teammates like that, and I'm sure the other coaches in the room are going to be able to help you out as well because we want to hear from them collectively. I think we have a lot of knowledge in this room. I'd love to hear from somebody else. Travis, why are you here?
I'm here because I've never coached before, and I don't know anything about the game of basketball. And my wife said I have to coach my kids, so I'm gonna give it a shot.
Well, Travis, the one part is we're not going to talk a lot about coaching basketball. I think we're going to talk a lot about today about coaching and how to be a good coach and how to reach players and how to get those players to think about improving themselves and controlling what they can and can't control. And I think at the end, I hope you're going to realize that really the only thing you can control is yourself. And if you can convey that to your players, they're going to be so much better. So I think you're going to have a nice list of items that you're going to use as a new coach that's going to really augment the X's and O's. As you try to train yourself on YouTube or whatever with the X's and O's, this is really going to address the whole child, the whole player, and the way they think and the way they look at the game. So hopefully you'll get something out of this clinic.
Okay.
Excellent. And just for time purposes, Tony and Ruben, we'll skip you, but I'm going to get back to you two, okay? Just want to keep things going here. I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm here and why I'm a PCA trainer. Because I had to change something. I was a whack, a total whack when I started coaching. What's a whack? It's a win-at-all-cost coach. And I'm a win-at-all-cost coach because that's the kind of guys that coached me. And when I started to look back, I realized I was emulating them. And as a win-at-all-cost coach, it was killing me. I want you to listen to this quote, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it just fine. Tell me if you recognize who this is. It's an old-time football coach, but kind of summed up how I felt when I was coaching and my team lost.
Football is a rough game and often a cruel one.
Every time you lose, you die a little bit. You die inside, a portion of you. Not all of your organs, maybe just your liver.
Pain is inevitable.
Ruben or Tony, if you could hear that, do you know what that coach was, or can you empathize with that coach?
I feel like I've read about those coaches and maybe even seen them in the movies and on TV.
Yeah, that's
George Allen. That was his philosophy. Yes.
Tony, A+. I'm tossing you a piece of candy. It's 800 miles away because you nailed it on the head. George Allen, great coach, got the Washington Redskins to the Super Bowl, and that was how I felt. Every time my team lost, I really felt a part of me was dying inside, and it was driving me out of coaching. I finally had to do some change. And when I started learning about Positive Coaching Alliance and what the things that I could control and the tools I could use to make my players better, coaching began to be fun. I have to be honest with you all in the audience, I did this for selfish reasons. It saved me. It saved me as a coach. Now I care about winning, we all care about winning, but the more important thing is I'm focused on life lessons because that's something I can control. I can control how my team reacts and how they deal with situations. Winning will take care of itself. So with that, I'd like to hear from someone else real quick. Tell me about a win-at-all-cost coach that you know. Maybe you were one, maybe you were like me, maybe you'll be converted in this presentation. Kelly, why don't you tell me about a win-at-all-cost coach?
I had a basketball coach my freshman year in high school. I was a freshman playing on varsity, very little, and gave me the chance to play on varsity. I was thrilled about it, and anytime I made a mistake, I was yanked out of the game. I was told my mistake. I was told why I made my mistake, and I was told I was not going back in. For a long time, I had to sit and dwell on that mistake, and basically I was punished for the mistakes. And he would keep the same 5 players in all the time, all the time, all the time. And it was just all about winning. It didn't have anything to do with effort. We couldn't leave the court until we got 10 foul shots in, and sometimes we were there until an hour after practice. It was all about winning and all about the outcome.
And did that help you grow and become a better player?
It probably made me a better foul shooter, but I bet there are probably better ways to do it.
Right, and that's what this workshop's all about, is a better way of approaching and getting your players to grow and be better people. Because we have a problem in youth sports. You've seen it. You've seen the craziness in youth sport, and there's something that we in this room can do about that. So I'd like to get started with the workshop. So that would be the end of my introduction. So I'm going to do roots. I was telling Kelly the reason I'm doing roots is that part of the U.S. lacrosse is we have a PCA portion, and I got certified to do PCA for a U.S. lacrosse clinic. And I had a chance to be observed last week, and I did the first 2 principles, ELM and emotional tank. So I wanted to present to you roots.
Great idea.
Kelly, I don't have my thing set up so I can see the slides, or you can see the slide on me. So I'm just going to assume we're all starting on just the tree with the roots, and I would start it up right there?
Yep, we know what they are, so you're fine.
Good. I'd like to begin by talking about the 3rd principle in Positive Coaching Alliance, and that principle is honoring the game. And the way we look at honoring the game is through roots. And I don't want you to have to guess this acronym of roots. I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the slide here and have you look at it for yourself. And you'll see that roots talks about rules, opponents, officials, teammates, and self. And I'd like to present to you all in our small group, why do we have rules? How does rules honor the game? Why do we have rules? Travis, why don't you go first and lead us off on that?
I think the importance of having rules is that it evens the playing field in a sense that regardless of the team you're playing and the location you're playing at, everyone is starting at the same place, and you would hope everyone has the same approach to those rules.
So I see it from you, it's really a fairness issue, right? One reason we have rules is to keep it fair. Everybody knows what's going on. They all know the expectations when they go into the game.
Yeah. Correct.
Good. Ruben or Tony, I'd love to hear from you two about why do we have rules. Something building off of what Travis said. Why are rules there?
Well, I think rules are a way in which we define. Players like definition. People like definition. And I think rules give us that. A lot of the young people that I work with who are in a non-family situation, they gravitate towards sports because it has defined rules, and they know then what they can do and what they can't do, and the consequences for that.
Excellent. And every sport has a very clear set of rules. They're written in black and white. Now, they become very gray sometimes in the play of the game, but the rules begin with written in black and white. Ruben, what would you like to add to that?
The other thing that comes to mind is safety. Rules, at least in sports, I think help keep the participants safe and injury-free as best as possible.
Excellent. I come from 2 sports that are very physical, football and lacrosse, and both of those sports have huge emphasis on safety. And as we see more and more data coming out and how children get injured and brain injuries, I think rules are even more important. But we all know the reality. The reality is that rules get broken in sports. And every sport that we've probably played in or coached, there's certain rules that are going to get broken. Kelly, your sports, I overheard you talking about basketball, and I overheard you talking about another sport. Why don't you tell the audience what sport, a sport that you'd like to share with us, and what rules are so commonly broken in that sport or overlooked?
Two things right off the bat are in field hockey, the ball can't hit your feet, very simply. And a lot of times it does when you're dribbling down the field and the refs don't notice it, or especially if it's like a scramble in front of the goal, the ball can get kicked in and it just, nobody says anything, and that's a rule that's broken pretty often, I think.
Right, and how do you address as a coach that rule being broken by your own team, and then how do you address that when the other team breaks that rule? How do you deal with that with your team?
We usually, call it in practice. I have the kids really stand up for themselves, and we talk about the reason and the fairness for the rule. So if we're at practice or a scrimmage and the ball hits your feet, be the first one. Definitely be the one that admits the ball hit your feet before somebody else accuses you of it. And we just talk about how that's just really helpful for the officials. If the officials see that you're willing to admit a mistake, they're going to be more likely to ref on your side.
Excellent, really honoring the game. What about your opponent? What if your opponent consistently is breaking that rule and maybe the officials are missing it? How do you address your team when that situation happens?
That's a little more difficult because the players are always ready to jump on the official. But we talk about the fact that a lot of things are missed and mistakes are made in the game, and the ref's doing the best they can to keep two eyes on 15 players. And it's really hard to keep an eye on everything at once. So I really just have them give the refs a break that you can't always do everything.
Excellent segue into the second letter, which is, I'm jumping ahead. I'm going to say we're going to switch these up because it's a good segue. I'm going to switch these up to officials because you were talking about that. And another way we honor the game is how we respect the officials. The officials are out there doing their job. It's a fast-paced game, any game, and they're doing their very best. But just like anybody else, they're going to make mistakes. Travis, I'm going to put you on the spot here, and in the sport that you're familiar with coaching or you're participating in, how do you work with your players to overcome or deal with an official's call that they don't believe is right? And we don't want to sit and argue with the officials. Like Kelly said, we want our officials to come back to our games. We want to set a good example. We don't want to get caught up in that call. So Travis, is there a method that you might use to help your players manage that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think prior to that, setting a culture where, as a coach, I don't worry about things that I can't control, including an official. When I was a basketball coach, for us, our signal was when a call was made, we would take the basketball and hand it to the official, regardless of how far we had to run. And that's our way of saying, with you, here's a basketball, and now we're gonna worry about the next play.
Great, and that sounds like an excellent ritual, and part of this is building those rituals, building those into practice. I got a great a story that when I did lacrosse, and there's a lot of rules in lacrosse and in boys lacrosse, and when we would scrimmage, I would intentionally make an outrageous call, a call that only the absolute worst official could make, just to get my players trained to how to react to that. And Travis, just like your situation, our ritual was in lacrosse, if there was a call made, we were immediately just to put the ball on the ground, right? We're not going to argue. We're going to put the ball on the ground, and we're going to get to the spot we need to be at. So we're focusing on reacting to the situation, not reacting to the call, because too often you see when a player or a coach begins to argue a call, the play goes the other way, and sometimes you might give up a goal because you're arguing, and that's not helping your team. I like your point that the only thing you can control is yourself. Let's go to the second one, and sorry I bounced around. It just seemed like a good segue with Kelly, and that's opponents. I coach the game of lacrosse, and lacrosse has a really cool ritual that honors the game. It's a Native American game. It's been passed down, and honor and lacrosse go hand in hand. They can't be separated in the sport. And there's a ritual we have in lacrosse. Before every game, we line up. And most people that play lacrosse don't know why we line up. We line up before the game with the officials, the players playing, and then we shake hands and start to play. But there's a reason that goes back to when the Native Americans played. When the Native Americans played, you might have teams of hundreds of players, but you wanted to be equal, and you wanted to respect your opponent and make sure that you were playing 1 against 1 and they were equal numbers. So they would all line up, and the extra players for one team would sit down, and they would not participate, so it was fair, and then the opponents would look each other, shake their hands, and play. That ritual has been passed down, and I think in lacrosse we've got a great ritual in the pregame handshake, and afterwards as a postgame handshake. We respect our opponents. Gosh, I remember just a few years ago when Division I football tried to implement a handshake before the game, and it was a disaster. There were fights, there were arguments, the officials didn't know how to do with it, the coaches didn't know how to do with it, the athletic directors on the field. It didn't work. Yet in lacrosse, for hundreds of years, the game starts with a handshake, the game ends with a handshake, and it's part of the culture. It's the way we play lacrosse. Teammates. This is a one you might struggle with, I struggle with. What happens if we have a team where we've got some good players and some not so good players? And you know sometimes the good players can get upset with the not so good players. And I'm going to turn to you. I want to hear how you build a culture of your team where each teammate respects each other despite their level of talent and playing ability. How do you get those teammates to respect each other? And I'd like to go with Tony and Ruben over there, maybe hear from them.
Got about 1 more minute, Tony, just to let you know.
Okay, no problem. Oh, you guys are... okay.
They're good.
When I think of teammates, I think of honoring 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that team, that community. Everything that you do on and off the field, you're showing respect to your community, to your team. That's what I think about.
Excellent. Thanks, Tony. Real quick, Ruben.
Yeah, what I think about there is I like appealing to the concept of the great ones. One of the things they do in any sport is they make their teammates better. And so I like when someone doesn't appreciate all his teammates or puts down the lesser players, I try to appeal to that sense of, you know, Michael Jordan made his teammates better. Karch Kiraly made his teammates better. Mia Hamm, she made them better. She didn't bring them down. She made them better.
A triple impact competitor. I like that. The last letter is self. Just making sure that you take care of yourself.
All right. Thank you very much. Well done.
You know, then I just would have ended it then with the Jim Thompson quote and you know, talking again about the way we do things here, because that's kind of what everybody kind of said, kind of led to that's the way we do things here.
Good. That would be a good wrap up. All right. Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, Tony, how did you feel doing that for a second time? You know, I know this is kind of a different thing, but after you were observed and you got feedback, how did you feel doing that again? Did you implement some of the things that you were given suggestions about?
Feedback, and I think the challenge in doing this at a USL clinic is they've compacted your 90-minute workshop without the scenarios into 65 minutes. So I was really pushing through with a lot more me. So I took that feedback from Ruben, and I wanted to try to keep making sure that I kept going back to you all and involving you all, much less me talk, more you talk. I still think I was talking too much because I'm looking at Travis's clock over his shoulder in his room, and I'm looking, I'm running out of time here. So then I'm always, I got to talk some more. But I want to keep working on getting more me with less talk, you all with more talk.
Good. I agree. I think that's great. It's hard too, and we've had this conversation a few times today with different people that have been going through. With somebody that's got as much experience as you do, you could probably make this an 8-hour workshop. And to really sit back, the way that the audience will get the most out of it is for you to sit back and really pull things out of the audience. And I think I could definitely tell you were trying to do that more. That was very good. What I'd like to hear is a positive from Tony and Ruben and Travis. If you don't mind, just to go down the line, what did you like about what Tony did?
Well, for me, Tony, there are people who have contagious personalities that jump out of a screen, or obviously, if we were in front of you, we'd be able to feel it even more. And you are someone that I'd want to listen to. Talk about really just about anything. I don't know anything about lacrosse, but I'll sit and listen to you talk about lacrosse, and so I really appreciate that.
Great, thank you.
Ruben or Tony?
Yeah, I'm going to let Tony go first, and then I'll go.
Okay.
I love the high positive energy that you project, and I actually picked up some great tools from you as to draw more and more out. You had follow-up questions with when you specifically went to an individual. You didn't let them just give you so much. You followed up and then drew even more out of them, and I like that. I'm going to steal a little bit of that from you if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I steal everything.
R&D, baby, R&D.
Rip off and
Duplicate.
Rip off and duplicate. Okay. Tony, I really appreciated what you did here. I gave you 2 pieces of feedback the other night that were passed on to me. I was the messenger, right? And I was interpreting it. And so, and one was make sure that you have steady, consistent, ongoing interaction back and forth with your participants. I thought you were very strong there, and I thought it was very strong, Tony, and I appreciate the way you did that. Secondly, the other piece of feedback I got was that you had trouble with the videos a little bit. The technology didn't cooperate with you very well, and sure enough, here you brought your speakers, you brought a sound bite in, you knew exactly what you were going to do with that, including holding the speakers up to your computer so we could hear it. So you did, you were thoroughly prepared on the technology piece also. And so, the 2 little question marks that Zach passed along to me, because he really liked you as a trainer, he had those 2 question marks. You addressed them beautifully in this mock workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you.
I agree. I agree with everything everyone said. The one thing I do remember about you, Tony, when we saw you in Baltimore, was that you said that you like to present your workshops from the back of the room. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really cool. I always remember that you did that. So I know this is a little, different than that, but I thought I wanted to bring that up because I thought that was a neat idea to kind of take yourself out of the focus of that. The other thing I love it when I'm listening to somebody as a leader of a workshop and they admit that they've screwed up. That to me right there makes me go, oh, good, thanks. He's not the perfect expert and he's not telling me how I need to be. And you did that right away, and you did it in a way that, made me feel like you really did change, and it was for the better, and that made me alone want to listen to you. Because if I had a twinge of that, like, yeah, I'm kind of win at all costs too, maybe I can do things better as well. So I really appreciated that. Again, the George Allen quote I thought was great. And I also like the way you did add your personal stories, but I don't think those personal stories were too long. I think you were just adding a little sprinkles in of your own experience, and I thought you did it really. I think it was a good balance.
Good, thanks.
Yep, absolutely. All right, now I would like to do just to go down the line and just do a wish or a constructive criticism that you have, some feedback for Tony on that.
Yeah.
Travis or Tony or Ruben, go ahead.
It's kind of, you're asking us to be critical, so you're asking us to provide a wish.
Yes.
And so, in the spirit, I guess, of being nitpicky, understanding the time constraints and using a video chat, obviously it was very rushed at the end. Like, I thought the pacing was good, and then, apparently I gave you a subliminal message with my cough behind, so apologize for that. But yeah, it was rushed at the end, so I guess pacing of it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ruben, Tony?
Yeah. Again, we're with Tony. You're very polished tonight, and so just some fine-tuning things. For me, it's a couple of choices of words. Tonight, this is about how to be a good coach. I would recommend that you replace the word good. Mm-hmm. Okay. For one thing, you might be speaking to a bunch of good coaches already. Right. They might be good coaches. So I would change that phrase. Tonight we're going to explore really what Positive Coaching Alliance means when they say being a positive coach. We're going to explore that and see if we can move further in that, something like that. Does that make sense, Tony?
Yeah.
And then the other one is related. It has to do with terminology. Where is it? Oh. Put you on the spot. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
I'd like you to replace that too. I'm gonna invite you all in to participate. In fact, I'm gonna insist that you all participate. And but I don't think anybody really likes being put on the spot. And it just, I think you can send the same message in a more positive way, Tony. A more positive way. I'm going to pull you in. I'm going to get your input throughout the workshop.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Here, I'll turn it over to Tony.
Okay.
The only criticism I would have, or suggestion I would have, is when you're doing the routes, when you're talking about that principle, to sit down maybe and even out those 5 messages. I thought we spent a little bit more time with rules, which was a great one. I mean, I could probably spent the whole 15 minutes just on rules. I love that. But in terms of the pace of the workshop, maybe we can only give so much to that, and then move on to the opponents, and then move on to the officials, and move on to teammates, and move on to self. And then I think that would give you a better flow.
Yep. I love going last because you guys really did hit exactly what I just said. I did have, let me put you on the spot, because I think, even when you, I call it cold calling. Now I know you did it in this situation, you might not do it in a workshop, but I'm just always careful about who I cold call, and let me put you on the spot. Instead, another way to get less pressure is, turn to the person next to you and share this story, something which I know you know already, but that was something that I picked up too. And again, you spent like 3.5 minutes on rules alone, which is, again, it's something that you feel strongly about, and that's okay. I spend way too much time on teammates. I've been told that, and I do it myself. So I kind of rush through some of the others and spend a lot of time on teammates. The other thing too, and you didn't do it often, but I didn't really hear much mention of PCA's research. There were 2 times when I noticed that you said, well, I believe, and it's true. You do believe it as well, but you're representing Positive Coaching Alliance and what you're sharing. So I'd like to hear what PCA has shared and brought together to present this workshop to you. I want to hear what Tony has to say too as a backup for that, but I think we just have to be careful in turning it into I believe, or I think, that kind of a thing. And those were the 2 that I had. I thought you did a fantastic job.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Travis, your turn.
Well, Tony, you set the bar high, so I appreciate that.
You can handle it.
So, my name is Travis Drake, and I am a former college basketball player of Citrus College down in Glendora, California. I was a varsity basketball coach for 4 years at Washougal High School. I co-founded and co-directed the Dan Dickow Basketball Academy here in Vancouver, Washington, along with Dan Dickow. After my teaching career ended because of my entrance into administration, I have been an assistant principal as well as an athletic director, and I am currently the principal of Prairie High School, and I'm also an adjunct faculty member at WSU Vancouver, teaching classes about classroom management as well as PE. My purpose, my motivation of getting involved with PCA has been what has motivated me has been watching coaches who do it wrong, and watching coaches and parents who are ruining an experience for players, and then watching how players respond to the influences they're getting from the adults in the equation. So I am currently the coach of my 2 daughters, 10 and 8. I am their basketball coach, and I have learned more in the year that I have spent coaching them than the 9 years that I spent coaching high school basketball. So for me, that is kind of my mission and my why. PCA's mission is to develop better athletes and better people, and they do that through 2 main focuses: striving to win as well as teaching life lessons. And through that, there are 3 main principles: the elm tree of mastery, effort, learning, and mistakes, accepting that mistakes are okay, filling the emotional tank, and then finally honoring the game. what we're going to spend time on today is looking at filling the emotional tank. And before we do that, I would like each of you to spend just a few seconds thinking about that player that you dreaded coaching. That player that before you left the house to go to practice, maybe you said to your wife or your husband, I don't know if I can do it tonight. This is going to be tough. And as you have a picture of that player, because I think we all have at least one, hopefully not too many, think about some of the characteristics of that athlete that maybe didn't sit well with you or that maybe you struggled with. Does anyone have, obviously without naming names, does anyone have characteristics of a former athlete that when you got to the gym or the field, you knew it was going to be an hour and a half or 2 hours of a struggle for you working with that player? Can anyone give us some characteristics?
Defensive.
Okay.
In other words, they've got a reason for why they're doing it their way and why they don't want to do it your way, and they tend to make excuses, and they tend to be very defensive when you try to coach them.
Okay.
I would say arrogant. That was the first word that popped up. But just cocky and arrogant, and too good for us. Not a team player.
Okay.
Good one. Unpredictable. Just never knew day to day what that player would bring. That was a challenge.
It's exciting not knowing.
And then there's those that I've had that just show a lack of effort. Just a lack of effort.
Okay. And so the way PCA's approach or the philosophy behind filling the emotional tank is obviously there are two different types of players. There are players whose tanks are full and players whose tanks are empty. The players that we just discussed, Ruben's arrogant player, their emotional tanks are empty. And PCA's philosophy on the characteristics of what an empty emotional tank look like, players who are pessimistic, players who give up more easily, and players who are not coachable. And the one common thread amongst the examples we just heard, those players we mentioned are not coachable. For me, it was a young man who I can picture him very clearly, and I was a young varsity coach. I was 23 when I became a varsity coach, and I was miserable. The players were miserable, and I tried everything in my toolbox, which wasn't much at 23, to try and get through to players, and I forced it. And when you force it, as we all know, sometimes it doesn't work out so well. So players who have empty emotional tanks, those are the characteristics that we see. Now let's flip that around. What are some of the characteristics of those players where you look at them and you're like, I wish I could clone him or her. I wish that were my child. What are some of the characteristics of those players?
Just
what about you?
For anything. I just think up for anything. Anything you put out at them, they're like, yeah, coach, great. And they're just always just so into it. Exciting.
A big heart. Kid that has a big heart.
Yes. Ruben or Tony?
Yeah. Team attitude, selfless team first attitude.
And I'd say unstoppable. That hard worker that just will never give up.
Okay. And so the characteristics for me, that I think of when I think of these players, it's actually a young man who ended up living with my family 2 years ago because of situations in his own life. And obviously with young kids, we talk about trust with the players that we just mentioned. To trust a young man who I coached to live in a house with 2 young kids, there's no better testament to that. So players that we just described would be athletes whose emotional tanks are full, and characteristics would be optimistic, dealing better with adversity, and then of course just being more coachable. And so it's really easy, and we could sit here for hours and talk about our horror stories and our victories with kids. But the real question is, do we feel like we have control over that? Do we feel like we can dictate one way or the other? Player's emotional tank is full or empty. Do we have control over that? And the reality is we do. As coaches, we have a tremendous amount of control. We don't control how they come to us, but we control how they are when they are with us. So those players, let's just look at maybe just one example of a player that we really struggled with. Does anyone want to admit, because I'm going to in just a minute, maybe some of the mistakes that you made with some of those players that you struggled with? Ruben, I see you're laughing. So do you have any, with your wisdom and experience, a long time ago, can you remember what you did?
Yeah, well, I made plenty of mistakes, I think. I think I took things personally. I think I took a kid's behavior or attitude too often. I took it as an attack on me personally, and it wasn't. It was other things going on, and so therefore I missed the opportunity to support and nurture and like you called it, fill in whatever whatever tank the gas tank that you said they have.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think I spent too much time focusing on a player I couldn't reach, to the point of, I don't know if I would say necessarily bullying, but to the point of just being in that kid's business too much because I couldn't reach him, and that just wasn't a positive relationship. That just wasn't my role as a coach. I've always felt bad about that.
Yeah. And so for me, the athlete that sticks out, it's that kid that I worked really hard to try and get to him. Unsuccessfully. I worked really hard. I tried doing the buddy-buddy thing. I tried the sarcasm. I tried not talking to him at all. I tried the tough love. And really what I did is just pushed him away, and he ended up not playing anymore, which is, of course, tragic. So, we have players whose tanks are full and players whose tanks are empty. We looked at the characteristics of that athlete when their tank is full, and the characteristics and the pain from both sides, the player and the coach, of when the tank is empty. Things that can drain a tank that we just kind of talked about: criticism and correction, sarcasm, ignoring, which didn't work well for me, and then the nonverbals, the body language that we all present, which people read loud and clear. To those athletes that we worked well with, we think that it's, and oftentimes really it's not what we're doing, it's almost what we're not doing. But many athletes come to us in pretty good shape, and it doesn't take a whole lot of work to get those whose tanks are already full. They're probably going to be good regardless. But when the tanks are full, we're giving truthful, specific praise, and we'll talk about that more in just a second, expressing appreciation, listening, and then the nonverbals are all positive. So again, we do have the ability as coaches to fill tanks. One of the most powerful ways, and as a high school principal today, actually, we were looking at as a staff in the school world. There's a lot of acronyms in the school world, and I don't know most of them, but one of them is PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention Systems. And in PBIS, it looks at what's called a magic ratio, and PCA also uses what's called the magic ratio in terms of positive interactions to negative interactions. And the magic ratio is 5 to 1, 5 positives to 1 negative. And I don't think I need to state the obvious that usually it's reversed. And actually some research shows that it's more like 1 to 9 or even 1 to 10. I hate to say it, at my high school, I just went into a classroom yesterday, it was more like 1 to 17. And so that was a fun conversation we got to have today. Can anyone talk about why it is so much easier for us to use negative reinforcement and negative interactions as opposed to positive?
I guess because a lot of times you feel like the person deserves it.
Right, because they're doing it to you, of course. It's personal.
It's quicker. It's much easier to say just don't do that than thinking of a creative way to change that behavior in a different way.
Correct. Yes, exactly. Tony or Ruben?
Well, I was going to say, as coaches, we just seem to be we gravitate, and in some cases we're trained and we train ourselves to point out faults, to notice faults and to point them out. So I think that's part of what makes it natural.
Right.
And I'd say two things. I think we learn from the past, mistakes that were made in the past, those who were our coaches, who we learned from. And then I think it's kind of a society, the society in general does that. It's not who you're voting for, it's who you're voting against, right? So that whole negative thing gets out there.
Right. And it feels like it's a knee-jerk reaction, I find. You know, it's almost therapeutic. You make me angry with what you just did, and now it's my goal and my role to let you know how angry you just made me feel. A friend of mine who played at Washington State University under Tony Bennett, David Harmeling, he played for, like I said, Tony at WSU, and I asked him if he knew that Tony was going to leave when he left to go to Virginia, and this was David's senior year. And David said he saw a shift in Tony his last year, and I think Tony Bennett's one of the greatest coaches in the country, but he saw a shift in Tony his last year, that at timeouts, Tony stopped giving them tangible things to correct and started just yelling at them and questioning effort. And David can see that Tony was just visibly frustrated. And I think we're all guilty of that. Instead of teaching a kid how to fight around a screen or fight through a screen, we question their toughness or question their desire, and that's easier. To summarize, like I said, there's emotional tanks of every player, however you want to call it, or whatever you want to call it, there's emotional tanks of every player. There's common characteristics of players with full tanks and empty tanks. Kids with empty tanks are not successful, and we all know that. And so really the question is, how much are we willing to, as coaches, be part of the process of filling tanks? And I would suggest if we're not motivated to fill those tanks, then there's going to be a lot of frustrating drives to practice and frustrating drives home from practice, and spouses who are probably tired of hearing about a certain player on the team. And so we have to accept that responsibility. Overall, I would say, to me, the most important thing a coach can do is establish that positive relationship, and the magic ratio and filling tanks. All of those things lead into establishing relationships. And, I think many of us grew up with coaches that maybe we didn't have a relationship with, but we were scared of. And we would go home to parents who would say, you need to toughen up. And so then you go back to practice and you do whatever coach says. And I can tell you from being in the education world and working with coaches and speaking to you all as coaches, this, that fear of authority and that fear of position is gone for the most part, and that's a good thing. And so the real challenge for the adults in the equation of athletics is we don't have room for error. And if we don't establish those relationships, then it really doesn't matter what your coaching background or your coaching knowledge is. Those players aren't going to want to work hard for you, and that will become the culture of the team. And so if you establish that culture of the team, the characteristics we talked about that you mentioned earlier in terms of positive and negative players, and then the strategies, no longer it's just the coach speaking positively to the players. You have teammates speaking to teammates, and then you have a successful culture. So that's all I have. I don't have my clock to look over my shoulder, Tony. So.
That's great. You only have 1 minute left anyway.
Okay, so I just to wrap up, I want to say, I joined PCA because I was tired of watching youth coaches and embarrassed at some of my previous behavior in terms of how the adults can ruin the kids in the equation of athletics. And so PCA, has a pretty systematic approach to dealing with that. And I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. Nice job. All right. How'd you feel about that, Travis?
I don't do well with writing things down.
Mm-hmm.
And most of my job, and obviously I'm a principal of a large high school, and I'm in front of staff all the time. I'm in front of 1,500 students, And I have found, and when I speak at graduations, I found when I write things down, I know the outcome. The outcome is going to feel very robotic and systematic, and I walk away never feeling good. When I don't write things down, oftentimes it's kind of the home run or the strikeout. Sometimes I walk away going, I nailed it. Sometimes I walk away going, there's probably about 15 things I should have said. But I usually feel better, when I'm not so rehearsed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how do I feel? I don't know. I'll think about it more later, and after hearing your feedback, I guess I'll have a better idea.
So was this a write down or was this a not write down?
I really didn't write anything down. I have the slides printed off in front of me.
Okay.
And I tried to block off more time to prepare for this today.
Mm-hmm.
But not to be a downer, we had a student pass away yesterday, and so we've been dealing with that all day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's
Awful.
it's been a rough day, but this has been good to, I've had this to look forward to. So, and I don't say that, I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. I mean, it is what it is.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate your honesty.
Kelly, can I follow up there?
Sure.
The no notes and Travis. When we work with trainers, we want them to lose the notes as soon as possible. Go ahead, study notes. Read the script. Prepare. Know the videos. But when you're in workshop mode, which you were right now, this was workshop mode. It's practice. It's mock. Notes. I think hold back the trainers consistently, and the sooner they get rid of the notes. This one thing Tony did very early on is, he went up and he went with what was in his head, and he was in the moment immediately. So Travis, I really want to compliment you on that. I'm glad you do it that way.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. How about Tony or Tony? What are some positives that you saw?
Yeah, so Travis, a great presentation, and I'm a teacher, so happy to have you as my principal because I like your smooth, measured presentation. I'm all about that. Dramatic day-to-day, I'm all about easing the drama. And so I like the way you present. I can just tell it's smooth, and love the way you hit the PCA keywords and phrases. Good job throwing those in there. And I really liked your answer to my player when I said that you just couldn't predict it from day to day, and you turned that around to a positive. It's exciting not knowing. So that's great. And I'm a Coug too. I remember those teams. So you had me at being a Coug. So. No, that was good. I really and just enjoyed hearing your presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Tony, go ahead.
I can totally relate to what you're saying in terms of getting a feel for the group that you're speaking to. Here, you don't have an opportunity necessarily to do that because we aren't a group per se, and so that's hard to read. I think as you go along, you get a better feel for the audience that you're speaking to, and you understand whether you got a single or home run or you struck out on that particular issue. In my opinion, you hit a home run tonight. I loved your passion, and I loved how you spread that around to us, and then I loved the stories that you told. The different. I didn't think they were too long. I thought they were right to the point, and I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Travis, I liked your level of interaction, and I thought you had us pulled in and participating steadily. Mm-hmm. And it was constantly and steadily, and I think you took it above and beyond that in that the comments that we did make, you were able to refer back to them. You transitioned them to your next point. I thought it was real good. I thought the questions you asked, without having it written down, without notes, they just seemed very purposeful, and you knew where you wanted to go with them. I thought that was very well done.
Thank you.
And Ruben, just to piggyback on that, because I was going to talk about what I think was one of your strongest qualities was your questioning style. And I think you can tell you're an experienced educator because you asked a question with a purpose in mind. You knew what you wanted the answer to be, and you sort of, channeled our responses in that way. And I thought that was really great, rather than just leaving it open-ended. So your questions were very purposeful. Simply, can we really dictate control over whether tanks are empty or full? I mean, that's not a normal question that you hear a lot of trainers use, but it was a great question to get us thinking about the idea of controlling and that we do have a lot of power. Because I think a lot of coaches would probably say, no, the kids either come with a full tank or empty tank. But I thought it was you asked very thoughtful questions, and it was interesting. So I'm gonna switch gears real quick to the wish or the negative, because it's kind of a double-edged sword here. Because the very first thing I was watching, and I guess you started at 15 minutes left, and then around 12 minutes, I wrote down smile because your whole when you smile and you light up, your energy level rose a little bit. But there was like 6 minutes there where you didn't have a smile on your face, and it was just, obviously it could have a lot to do with the day that you've had the last couple of days, which I'm sure. But I would have liked to see a little bit more sort of energy and more like you were having fun with it. I think your introduction is very powerful because, you admitted that this is why you're here, because you've seen a lot of mistakes, you've seen a lot of negativity, but I was sort of waiting for the flip side that was the positive side of that, and you sort of kept it at a negative level, and I was like, oh, okay, now give me the bright side. So I was sort of waiting for the bright side to come. But I'll let everybody else give their wish too, and then I can always tack on at the end. But I just wanted to add that in because at first I thought, I love your presentation style because it's very thoughtful and very orchestrated. But then on the other hand, I think I would like to see a little bit more of that. I
depress you.
No, you don't depress me. Tony or Ruben, go ahead.
Oh, I can go. Travis, I wished you would have emphasized more your experience coaching your daughters, because I was putting myself in the audience, and I right away, I coach daughters, or here's a guy who is willing to coach at a little kid level where they're falling over each other, and because you hit me with your resume, and you got an awesome resume. There's no arguing with your resume, but sometimes that resume can kind of go, this guy knows it all. I didn't like my principal when I was in high school, or, he coached high school basketball. He's up and down yelling and screaming. When you talked about coaching your daughters, then all of a sudden I said, hey, wait a second. I can relate to this guy at that level. So just, I guess that would be my wish, is maybe tell a little bit more about that, and then come in with your resume, which is an outstanding resume. Don't get me wrong on that. But I think sometimes some people go, again, I think Kelly maybe mentioned way at the back, where we don't want to be up there being know-it-alls. Like, we've got all the answers, and that we've been in your shoes. We've had a practice where everything fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good point. Ruben or Tony?
Yeah, I think I would have to piggyback on what Tony said. Coaching your daughters would have been. I actually wanted to make a comment at one point about coaching our 5 kids and how I was miserably failed with the first 2 and had the opportunity to get the next 3 and make up for that. And so that right now I got to tell you, that smile that you have right there, that lights up a room.
Mm-hmm.
That lights up a room. And you had me emotionally involved in your presentation from point 1. Mm-hmm. So that would be the only criticism I would give, and that's not a criticism at all. It's something that you could do even better, I think. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, so Travis, I think my wish is related to the feedback you've gotten so far. You're the second trainer that I've experienced today that I would describe as having intensity. There's an intensity that comes through, and it's about your emotional commitment to this, what we're all about, and I think it's a strength. It's a strength. But I don't want you to scare them off, okay? When you tell me, as a coach, there's no room for error, that sounds scary to me, especially if I'm a volunteer coach and I've never done it before. It's like, oh my gosh, I just want to help the kids have fun and so make sure that there's enough coaches so we can have a team, And this guy's telling me, that I got no room for error. I think along those lines, Travis, the group you're talking to, you'll play that up or play it down. If you're in front of a high school athletic department, the coaches that you're usually giving feedback to, I could see going more in that direction. They're professionals. Many of them are educators. I can see a little more of that, but with the youth sports coaches, I think I would tone that down a little bit. Yeah, I guess that's my wish.
Yeah, I get it.
And I think it's good. I think Ruben, or Tony said it really well. You both, Tony and Travis, you guys are both very polished presenters. So in terms of, that's why we say wishes, not criticisms, because you guys are fantastic. It's just trying to help you for the future. We want you to succeed, so we're giving you some feedback that you can think about. The only other thing I had that nobody mentioned was when you're talking about emotional tanks, I would have liked to hear more examples of how you fill emotional tanks. I really like the way you linked I love it when you use PCA principles and you link them to real life. Like in my school, I'm a principal. We talk about this with the PBIS and the 5-to-1 ratio, and I thought it was great the way you brought the realism of, a lot of teachers unfortunately are 1 to 10 or 1 to 9. But I would have liked to hear, again, the positive side. I want to hear examples. How do I get there? What do I do? Or maybe you to ask the audience, what are some things you do on your team that can fill kids' tanks? Before practice, after practice, just something more tangible for me to walk home with some more of the tools, sharing some of that around. I would have liked to hear a little bit more concrete examples, maybe either brought out of the crowd or from you. And again, other than that, I think you did a fantastic job. And I think, from presenting, reading your audience live, it's a little easier to tweak what you're doing. And I've had points where I've been so serious and I look around and I think everybody in the audience is serious with me. So I've got to crack a joke or do something just to lighten up the room. And I think you would definitely read that as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we are, Ruben and I usually get a chance to converse after these, are you talking,
Kelly?
Ruben? Yes.
I am. I'm sorry. I was talking for a minute on mute there.
Okay.
So, hey, Tony and I are in a cafe and it's closing, so we're getting kicked out. But so when you're done here, Kelly, with the group, why don't you give me a call? We'll do our quick debrief.
Okay.
Tony and Travis, is a pleasure. And Kelly, congratulations on how you've helped these two trainers get to where they are. Very impressive.
Well, they're easy. It's good when you have easy material to work with.
Thank you, Ruben.
You're welcome, guys.
Thank you.
What cafes close at 6 o'clock at night?
They're in California. Who knows?
I know. I'm thinking, what happens here? All right, guys. Well, as far as you two are concerned, just to let you know kind of the next steps, I know Ruben and I are going to debrief, and I have a feeling that we know exactly where it's going to lead to. You guys are both, we're very confident in both of you. To be associate trainers would be the next step. So the next step for us would be to get you out to a workshop live to co-present with someone. For a full double gold coach workshop, you might present 2 of the principles, or the introduction and the elm tree principle, or something like that. And then that trainer from there would, help you a little bit, give you some suggestions, or say, you know what, you are good to go. I think, you should be certified and go out and do this by yourselves. So that will really be the next step. And the exciting thing is that our newest chapter to open is in Seattle. And that's coming very soon. So even if there's not a lot of action going around there now, and you might have to travel a little bit within the next 6 months or so, that's everybody in PCA is talking about Seattle, how it's a new up and coming, the next chapter office. So that's exciting for you guys, and I think it's fantastic. I'm really excited about having you guys on board.
Good.
Well, thank you very much, Kelly.
Yep. So we'll be in touch. Ruben, Eric Eisendrath, and I kind of split the country, and you guys are in Ruben's territory. So from here on out, he'll be the one. I'm always here for questions, comments, ideas, whatever you need. And all of the resources on the Google group for PCA Corner Trainer Course 4 are all at your fingertips still, whatever you need. But Ruben's going to be the person to do the contact work from here on out for you two. And then Sonia DeWitt is our trainer administrator, so she takes care of all the logistics and scheduling and all that type of stuff. So I'll make sure she's on board with all of that as well.
Cool.
Great. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Kelly. Nice
All right,
job, Tom.
take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.